AEW All Out is this Saturday on BR Live, and it's headlined once again by Jon Moxley defending his AEW World Championship against MJF. How's it going, everyone? This is Haris Kruskic, BR Live's Combat Sports reporter. We'll break down that main event between Moxley and MJF, give some bold predictions for the show, and we'll run down the whole card, and I'll give my picks for each match. So without further ado, let's get started. And let's start with the main event. We have Jon Moxley against MJF for the AEW World Championship. The president of AEW, Moxley, who's run rampant at AEW over the past year and a half, against what everyone says is the future of not just AEW, but pro wrestling in general, MJF. You hear Moxley talking about paradigm shifts all the time. Are we going to see another one at AEW this Saturday? You hear MJF, he's been on the campaign trail for the past couple weeks or so. And, you sometimes you hate it when you agree with MJF, but he brought up some valid points, basically saying that AEW coming in was the land of opportunity for guys that perhaps weren't as exposed as others, like Moxley, like Chris Jericho, who kind of made their name at other promotions. Is it time that AEW kind of makes that trend over to stars that made their name at AEW like MJF? I think it is. I think that we'll see a new champion crowned at AEW All Out, but we'll see. We'll see. If I had to guess, I would say that we'll probably see MJF finally becoming that world champion that everyone has been expecting, no longer being the future of AEW, but the present of AEW. It should be a very, very fascinating match. As I said, AEW could be going through a bit of a cultural shift now if they were to crown MJF, getting away from champions like Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley, who, no disrespect to them, it makes a ton of sense to have huge names like that carrying the division for the first couple years of its existence. But I think now is the time that we see a guy like MJF, the salt of the earth, the AEW World Champion. Now moving on to some bold predictions. The first one, you heard me talk about it a little bit when talking about MJF earlier, but I think now AEW All Out 2020 is when you'll see the future of AEW kind of become the present, and AEW moving away from the old guard of Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho, who have really carried the company for a year and a half or so, and moving towards guys like MJF and Orange Cassidy, putting them both over their veteran opponents, giving them huge marquee wins, and really starting to elevate AEW's homegrown stars, for lack of a better way of saying it. Nothing wrong with Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho and the strategy that AEW has had up to this point. I think that they have done a great job, but eventually you do need to move away from them and start pushing the younger talent. I say younger in the sense that we have seen them for less time than we've seen the other guys. Orange Cassidy's like 30-something years old. He's not that young, but I think that this is the time that we see MJF and Orange Cassidy make their way into the top of AEW. Nothing wrong with Mox and Jericho. You want those guys still around. They're two of the best talkers in the world, but I think it's time that we see the new guard at AEW come out, and I think All Out will be the flag bearer for that happening. That's right. Not only do I think we see a new AEW World Champion, I think for the first time since last January, we also see new AEW Tag Team Champions crowned. FTR, I think it's their time. I think this is the perfect point. We've seen them build up this feud with, Kenny Omega and Adam Page a little bit, but more importantly with the Young Bucks. I think this is the launching point for that feud to go on, where FTR and the Young Bucks finally have a match of their own for the titles. Kenny and Adam Page, although they have been brilliant in ring and delightful to watch throughout 2020, I feel like they're in a bit of a middle ground with their storylines. I don't really know where you go from here, except if you drop the titles from them, in which case Adam Page and Kenny Omega could potentially get into a feud. We've seen them both essentially call one another singles competitors, and I think that's still where they're most comfortable. To me, it just makes sense. I think Adam Page feuding with Kenny Omega, potentially, having issues after the match with FTR after dropping the titles. I think it makes sense for them to go that route and for FTR to go with the champs and start their storyline with the Young Bucks. I feel like the writing is a little bit on the wall here. I just think this makes sense. So FTR will walk out the new AEW Tag Team Champions. Yes. I think we finally see the debut of the new Four Horsemen at AEW. We saw it teased a little bit, and we've seen it teased over the past few weeks with Tully Blanchard and Shawn Spears kind of in the crowd, scouting people. I think we saw that take another step when they came to the aid of FTR when they were in the ring with the Young Bucks and the Rock and Roll Express during Tag Team Appreciation Night. I think we finally see that come to fruition. I believe, I'll take it one step further, my prediction. I think this is how it's going to play out. I think FTR defeat Kenny Omega and Adam Page for the Tag Team Championships. I think the Young Bucks come out and confront FTR, and following up is Shawn Spears and Tully Blanchard coming down to the ring. Shawn Spears comes to the aid of FTR, and the big sticking point to this is I think this is where Adam Page turns on the Elite and becomes the fourth member of the Four Horsemen. So yes, I'm predicting the Four Horsemen will debut, but I'm also predicting a heel turn for Adam Page. I think that with FTR, Shawn Spears, and Adam Page all together with Tully Blanchard leading the way, I think this could be a fascinating stable and an incredibly successful one. So there it is. I gave you two bold predictions in one. At the time this segment was recorded, there were 9 announced matches for All Out. So let's run down the card and I'll give my quick picks for each match. First off, we've got the main event, Jon Moxley against MJF. I've touched on it a little bit already. I'm going to go with MJF here. I think we start seeing a changing of the guards at AEW. And it starts with MJF, and then, as you'll see in my later predictions, it'll slowly kind of trickle down the rest of the card. Next up, we have Chris Jericho against Orange Cassidy. Again, I think the new guard finds its way in here. Orange Cassidy gets the win. He'll dunk Chris Jericho in a tank of mimosa. It'll be hilarious, probably a pretty epic match, but I'll take Orange Cassidy here. Next, we have Adam Page and Kenny Omega defending their tag titles against FTR. I'm going to go with FTR here. I think there's another title change that happens. To me, it just makes sense. I think this is the segue for FTR and the Young Bucks to finally have that epic match everyone's been waiting for. Meanwhile, Adam Page will be doing his stuff, hopefully, with the Four Horsemen. At least that's my prediction. And I think that he'll eventually find his way into a feud with Kenny Omega. Next, we have a champion versus champion match. Hikaru Shida, the AEW Women's World Champion, against Thunder Rosa, the NWA World Women's Champion. You know, I think this is going to be a really interesting match. Thunder Rosa looked great in her Dynamite debut earlier this week. I'm going to give it to Hikaru Shida. I just don't think there's been enough build-up for Thunder Rosa for AEW fans to be incredibly familiar with her. I think eventually Thunder Rosa might be the one to take the title off of Shida, but for now I'm gonna leave it to Hikaru. Next, we have the 21-man Casino Battle Royale. It's tough to predict this, obviously, with so many participants. I'll go with Lance Archer, him being the number 2 contender to the World Championship in the rankings, at least. I think it makes sense to push him. I think him and Jake Roberts have a good thing going. I think whether it's MJF that wins or Jon Moxley, I think it's compelling either way. So I'll go with Lance Archer, but keep an eye out on Eddie Kingston and Shawn Spears. I think those are probably my second and third choice to win the Battle Royale and become the number 1 contenders. But for now, I'll go with Lance Archer. Next, we have Matt Hardy against Sammy Guevara in their rubber match. It's a broken rules match, which means the only way they can win is if the opponent doesn't answer the referee's 10 count. The 10 count can happen anywhere. It does not have to be inside the ring. If there wasn't the stipulation that Matt Hardy would leave AEW if he lost, I probably would have gone with Sammy Guevara, but Matt Hardy's not going anywhere. I think that Matt Hardy will probably win this one just because of that fact. Like I said, I would have gone Sammy Guevara if that stipulation hadn't been added, but I just don't really see Matt Hardy going anywhere. So I'll go with Hardy. Next, we have the Dark Order taking on Matt Cardona, Scorpio Sky, and the Natural Nightmares. This one's a pretty straightforward one for me. I think it's going to be the Dark Order. There's just too much momentum going on their side. Natural Nightmares, Scorpio Sky, and Matt Cardona have all just kind of been put together. I don't think the Dark Order and their rivalry with Cody is quite done yet. I think Cody might make an appearance during this match, actually. So I'm going to give it to the Dark Order. A late addition to the card, Jurassic Express against the Young Bucks. There's not a ton of build-up to this match, but I like the two tag teams very much. I think it's going to be a very good match. There's just not a lot of storyline behind it, but I'll go with the Young Bucks here. I wouldn't be surprised if Jurassic Express won, but I'm feeling the Young Bucks on this one, so I'll go with them. And last but certainly not least, on the pre-show, it's Britt Baker against Big Swole. This feud has been going on for months. Even when Britt Baker was injured, Big Swole and Britt Baker were going at it. So I'll go with Britt Baker on this one. I think she needs some momentum to come on her side as she's coming back from injury. So and it's a tooth and nail match, so it's probably right up her alley. I'll go with Britt on this one. Don't forget to watch AEW All Out this Saturday, September 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Pre-show starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. And if you like this video, please subscribe and you'll see more content like this.